that was the last question.
Yes. So, in fact, instead of having the last part of this lecture, in fact, I am answering 2 questions, and it's the same. Let's start. The middle part of the lecture was what happened when you follow your conscience. You see those 2 lines of stronger inner human being and personality also becoming stronger. The moment you ignore your conscience, that doesn't mean that you didn't hear your conscience. No, you ignore your conscience. Yes, you heard something and you don't do it. What happens in your life? Because there is not a real an interaction between conscience and you, then that stream, that magical power stream, goes slower and slower and slower if you make a habit of not listening to your conscience. And that spiritual umbilical cord is shriveling, is becoming dystrophic. The river dries up and it becomes a little stream. And I always have more concerns for those people who do not hear their conscience anymore, who commit crimes or whatever, make mistakes in life, not being bothered by their conscience. That doesn't mean that there is no conscience, but the line between conscience and outer waking consciousness is so thin that that magical power cannot come through anymore. And that are the people who are to be pitied, who must be helped, not in personal way, but helped to listen again to their conscience, to train that. And how does that express itself? The less forceful way it expresses itself, and it was for me very difficult to translate it in English, what I found is a gnawing feeling. Yes, a feeling of that at the back of your thinking, it is always there. What is the reaction of your personality when you feel that? The reaction of your personality is self-justification. To explain to yourself exactly why you acted as you acted, while you know better, for your conscience told you otherwise. So the moment you start within yourself to justify yourself to yourself, then you know automatically that your decision was not following your conscience. Otherwise, there never would have been self-justification in your mind and in your thought. Not even to other people, but to yourself. So that is yourself to yourself, and that is the first feeling of having failed to listen. One step stronger is spiritual disappointment. You are disappointed to yourself. Yes, you disappointed yourself. And that is a stronger experience within yourself. And that voice that voice of disappointment, that is not the voice of conscience, that is your own voice, repeating and repeating, oh, this was not good, it was not good. People want to silence that voice of knowing you made a mistake. And to silence that voice, people try to do that by drinking, by using drugs. Most of the time, also in younger people, they start doing that not because they want to be part of a group who use alcohol and drugs. That is the group dynamics. No, most of the time because somewhere within them they know they failed to act as their conscience hinted to act. And that is the second stage, that is stronger. One thing, if you see that happening around you, you can talk to people and explain them that that voice of spiritual disappointment will never be silenced by alcohol and drugs. It doesn't work. It seems to work, but it's only temporary. But the real fact is it doesn't work and it will not work, so it has no use to start to drink or start to smoke or start to whatever technique has been used by people. The third stage is to be sorry, to be totally sorry, to regret. And that is more intense. And Catherine Tingley, which I quoted at the beginning of this lecture, Catherine Tingley says, never regret, never be sorry, never regret. And it is a strange advice, for it is experienced as a good thing to be sorry for a mistake. But in fact, it is not so wise a thing to do. Why? Because being sorry means that you are circling, your attention is circling round your mistake. And by doing that, you strengthen that mistake, that weakness in your personality, and you strengthen it and you strengthen it, and then the idea I am not good at all can lead to depression. And that is why she says, do not even start to be sorry. But that can be experienced as very heartless, as very callous. Because when you make a mistake, you should be sorry. No, you have to do something else. Instead of being sorry, instead of regretting, you must take a firm, strong decision to right the wrongs done. If you have treated someone in a very unjust way, then you have to take the decision, whatever happens in my life, I will restore that unbalance. I will right the wrong. And that strong decision is in fact a kind of explosion of will. And that explosion of will, that decision so strong that you cannot lose that decision in your life anymore, that is a way to restore, in fact, your connection with your conscience. That is an explosion of renewed aspiration. And aspiration not only theoretical, but really restoring the life of the person that is treated unjustly by you. And that is quite a lot to do, because you have to do it without receiving gratefulness or receiving thanks or being, how must I say that? Being applauded to, yes? Being, okay, you know what I mean. I do not have to say it in another way. When you restore that unbalance, you do it anonymously. You do it without anyone seeing what you do. It isn't bad when someone sees it, but it never must be your goal to be seen, to restore it. Not even the person you treated unjustly. If you restore that unbalance, you do it without that person knowing it, if possible. And that is a far better answer than being sorry or regretting something. For what is being sorry? Being sorry is often apologizing to someone you treated unjustly. And that is a very selfish thing without people knowing that it is selfish. Because when you do something unjustly for another and you go to that person and you say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize," what you're doing at that moment is using your will to push that person in a situation that he forgives you. In fact, you do not change yourself. You manipulate the mistreated person to say, "Okay, I forgive you." And it is not up to you to force someone to forgive you. You have to restore the karmic balance. So that is the reason why Catherine Tingley say, take a firm, strong decision to right all the wrongs you have done in your life. And then the rest of your life, all the days will be full. I can guarantee you there is quite a lot to restore. So you're not the only one in this situation. So we had the gnawing feeling of not having acted following your conscience. Then you have the spiritual disappointment, and please do not start alcohol or drugs to forget that, for it will not work. Then you have the sorry and regret level, and Catherine Tingley advised you exactly what to do then. And then you have despair. And that is a very forceful feeling of having lost your contact with your conscience. That leads to utter despair. And the moment you see other people in that situation, please be there for them and help them to restore that contact. So knowing, in fact, disappointment, repentance and despair. And at every level you can turn the direction and go back to your conscience again. Why are you failing? Why are you not listening to your conscience? That is because everything in the universe is cyclic. You learn in a cyclic way. You do not learn in a linear way. You learn in cycles. Yes? Have you ever learned to ride a bike? How many times did you fall? before your feet and your feeling of equilibrium was so developed that you could ride a bike without even thinking of what you were doing. Yes? It took time. The same time you need for working with your conscience in a way you do not even feel that you are doing it. It is a natural habit. Yes? So it goes like this. So you fall and you step up the bike again, and you fall and you step up again. So the only thing what is really failing in all those failures is not those failures. It is the fact that you decide in your heart not to try anymore, not to step upon that conscience bike and ride again and fall, perhaps, and then step up again. And that is an attitude in life. The moment you see that things are not linear, then failures are not disastrous anymore, are not reasons to lose courage. Just continue going inward again and again and again to your conscience. And when you do that in a very honest way, really trying to reach inward, at that moment it is a cosmic law that every time your higher self in its three aspects will answer. It has to answer. It is not even allowed not to answer. So the moment you continue trying, there is always a training to restore that contact. And that restoring, I think I have explained it well enough. There is one thing that is very important to you to see as well. If you see other people around you failing in following their conscience, even when they try to do it, what will be your reaction when you see that? Godfried de Perucker, the fourth leader of this organization, explained it in a very inspiring way in one of his booklets. He said to his student the following: you cannot know, you cannot look into the heart of someone else. So if you see someone failing, that means that you never can see why he is failing. Perhaps he is failing because he has accelerated his karma, because he wanted to go that 7 steps path. I explained that to you. And when the personality becomes too strong, then you trip. And that is failing. But you don't know from another being, of another being, in what level of that 7-step way he is working. Perhaps his karma is so strong because he promised his conscience stronger to follow it than you did in your life. So first you do what you do with your fellow men who are failing, is forgiveness. That is a cosmic obligation to forgive. Always forgive even the person who forget his conscience the most, and who is acting against his conscience the strongest. And instead of criticizing, blaming, and tending to punish such a person, you do something else. For what part of you is criticizing, blaming, and tending to punish? That is your personality. For your personality sees the failing personality of someone else. But you, as a striving, learning, reincarnating human being, trying to live following your conscience, you can look further. And you see the inner man in the criminal. You see the inner man who is at the moment in a very regrettable situation, because that inner man is not capable of mastering his personality, his failing personality. And what you see is a fellow human being who needs help to master his personality. And the moment that you are criticizing his personality, you are overlooking the struggling inner man. And when you follow the way to that higher self, to your conscience, to your intuition, and to your inspiration, at that moment you are not your personality anymore. And you are capable of recognizing the inner part of someone else. And that inner part has to be supported, always. Because universally thinking as you do now, you are universal. And all other living beings are in fact you. Because they are part of the universe. And that is why you never are trying to punish a failing human being. Two parts in the pledge of the students of the inner school of our organization, two parts are calling to our hearts in that direction. The first one is never to listen without protest to any criticism to others, because it is not fair to criticize someone, and it is not a solution. And the second rule is never criticize yourself, others. So there is a lot to learn within yourself. The moment you live and you see you're always criticizing someone, then you know that from the conscience standpoint, you are losing control of your own personality. And the not listening without protest when someone else is criticized by someone who talks to you about that person, yes, in fact we call it character murder, but when you do not listen without protest to that criticism, what you in fact are doing is not so much protecting the person that is criticized. Okay, you protect that person as well, but the real protection you give to the person who is criticizing, because he is losing by that criticizing the contact with his own conscience. And that is in fact your lifeline. Yes, that Sutratman, you are that stream of consciousness from the heart of the universe. And that stream is narrowed when you criticize others instead of helping. And when you see someone else criticizing a third person, then you have to help the person who is criticizing. And by doing that, you help, in fact, the cosmos. For every thinker, every human being is a part of this planet that cannot be missed. And the better we all function, the better it is for the planet. And that is another month of lectures. I think, yes, next month it will be in our lecture program, in our English lecture program. So, to conclude this second lecture, what did we talk about? The question, can you train your conscience? No. You can train your ability to listen. And then we talked about how to start this contact with your conscience and how to build up that contact. Yes, in the morning, in the evening, and so on. And then what happens when you follow your conscience with you yourself? You become stronger, and your personality gives you ideas about what you should think. And do not identify with your personality, with the fear and the terrible fear and so on. And then we talked about what happens to you when you don't follow your conscience, and what happens to you when you restore contact with your conscience. I think with the first lecture and this lecture, we have at least made a beginning to understand what conscience is and what you can do within your own life with these ideas. The last two lectures of this series, we chose one thing, one act, when conscience is protesting most. For there are weaknesses. You can steal, you can do whatever things not following your conscience, but killing is in fact the strongest subject when your conscience is protesting. Your conscience is protesting against. So we had to choose something, and we chose this because what we tell you about killing is also working for all other weaknesses. Yes, we took the strongest. 2 lectures about killing as a group, countries and so on, religious fanatism. And the 4th lecture is about killing in your own life. Can you live without killing? And when I offered that title to my colleagues, other lecturers here, for we work in a group of lecturers, then they started to laugh and they said, it is not possible. You cannot eat without killing and so on. And then we talked about it, and there is so much more possible than you are aware of. And that I want to talk with you about in the 4th lecture. So next week or next lecture, we talk about killing as a group, yes, and the 4th is killing in your personal life, in your individual life. Are we stopping for 4 minutes and having questions? Yes? So take your time, 3 minutes. Did I say 4?
Yeah, 3, yeah, either is fine.
Doesn't matter. A few minutes. And then you can ask your questions. And I hope the 2 questions you gave before this part of the lecture are at least a little bit answered now. So we start with the few minutes. Friends, first of all, I would like to know if the 2 questions are answered, are satisfied. Please chat yes. That is easier for me to know that you have no questions anymore. Are there other questions?
Yes. The first one is, there's a thin line between criticism and constructive feedback. When someone gives, sometimes when someone gives a neutral suggestion, the reaction is still personal. What can we do about this?
Okay, good question. I tried in the last minutes of this lecture, I tried to explain to you that it is our duty when we go inward to look at the inner part of our fellow human beings as well, not so much to the failing outer part. And most forms of help that are given is that you suggest someone else how his personality should behave or could behave, or would it be better to act like this and that and that. And that is in fact still looking at the personality and suggesting how the personality should act. But what is the reason of the failure? That's not the personality. That is the fact that the inner man lacks strength to be master over his own instrument, his own personality. And what we have to do, is there an English lecture about what is helping? It will.
I believe so. I can check. I think so.
Yes. In our series of Dutch lectures, there is a lecture of Erwin Bomas about what is helping. And that is exactly the question you ask now. You help people to strengthen their inner confidence, their inner search for that magical power within themselves to be a harmonious master over their own personality. And that is a totally other way than telling a human being how his personality must behave. So the thin line is a thin line, you're right, but it is even thinner than you suggested. So how did you say it? Positive feedback?
So sometimes someone gives a neutral suggestion and the reaction is personal, even though it was neutral.
Yes.
And just a suggestion, yeah.
I give an example. When you see that someone treats another person unjustly, you can do 2 things. You can explain to that person that is treating someone else unjustly. You can explain to that person, for this is not the right thing to do, and so on. Yes, you can also ask that person, do you have the impression that this was the wisest way to ask, to act? For then you ask someone to go inside and to search there for the answer, was this right or wrong? And that is how you help someone, not using your conscience to educate someone else. No, asking the other person to go to his own conscience. Is this the best way we can treat someone else? Can we do it better? Yes, I do not want to say that you are wrong, that you are unjust. No, can you do it better? Yes, do you remember Pythagoras every evening? What have I done today? What can I do better? And if you fail yourself, do not regret, but decide to right the wrongs. And the only thing you can inspire others is to say, go inward, search within yourself. Is there a better way to treat? And then no one loses face. Everyone, no one fails, but someone else is offered the opportunity to do it better. And that is a way you can help so much. No, I said, you can inspire to so much improvement of the atmosphere in your environment. It works. It is really worth trying. I hope this is
Yeah, I
answering
think it's clear.
Yes? Okay.
Like instead of giving your own conscience, you ask a question that makes the other one go in, deeper in the conscience.
Yeah.
And about the other questions, I see the people replying yes. So
Okay.
their questions have been answered.
Okay. I can warn you already. The next lecture is seeking with each other in the help we received from others in wisdom, the founders of great philosophies and religions as Plato and the Buddha and so on. What can we learn from them to follow our conscience? And what can we learn from them to kill or not to kill? And that lecture was a 2 hours lecture when I prepared that. And we cannot give a 2 hours lecture. That is much too tiring for everyone, or it was even 3 hours. So next time I give you texts. And those texts are, of course, in our PowerPoint, but those same texts will be put on the website because it will be the study material for the study on that lecture a week later. And when you decide to follow the study meeting following this lecture of tonight, then you see that not so much text has been changed from the first lecture and study meeting, because it is such a rich source of inspiration and information. We are not yet finished with those texts. So you already have the text for next week. So I hope to see you if you decide to join the meeting, the study meeting. As always, we end our evenings or perhaps mornings when you are in America or whatever, wherever. And we always end with a text from the Rig Veda, the Gayatri from the Rig Veda, in Western words. But listen to what you have to say to your inner teacher, your inner Buddha, and your inner God. It is not just a text, it is talking with yourselves. O thou golden sun of most excellent splendor, illumine our hearts and fill our minds, so that we, recognizing our oneness with the divinity which is the heart of the universe, may see the pathway before our feet and treat it to those distant goals of perfection, stimulated by thine own radiant light.